Hi friends, this is Anne. I'm having a few topics to discuss you with. It is something regarding behaviorism. As we already know, psychology owes its origin to philosophy. However, as time passed, psychologists attempted to discard the approaches and methods based on speculations and provided a scientific base to the subject for the study of behavior. These all efforts gave birth to a number of schools or systems of psychology such as structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism, psychoanalysis, cognitive psychology, and many more. The emergence of these systems or schools of thoughts not only influenced the development of various trends and approaches for assessment of behavior, but also affected the process and products of education. In this presentation, we are going to deal with the topic or the schools of psychology, that is behaviorism. Behaviorism offers an alternative ways of teaching how the developmental process takes place. All the behaviorists share the same basic tenets, that is, development is a process that adheres to principles and laws of learning. J.B. Watson, who is an American psychologist, is known as the founder of behaviorist schools or the founder of behaviorism, which it is a school which came into existence as a protest against structuralism and functionalism. Since both the structuralism and functionalism gave importance to the consciousness of the human being and his studies, the J.B. Watson and his disciples rejected that, and they said that the whole idea of consciousness is absurd. Consciousness cannot be proved by any scientific test, for consciousness cannot be seen, touched, or exhibited in a test tube. Even if it exists, it cannot be studied scientifically because it cannot be observed scientifically. Behaviorism as a method of studying behavior focused its attention totally on the overt or observable behavior. So they give attention to the observable behavior rather than the consciousness. For this purpose, it tried to reduce all of man's activity, including his thinking, feeling, and violation to the level of that behavior, which could be observed and objectively recorded. So the behaviorist is not interested in fear because it cannot be measured. But they said that the heartbeat rate of the heartbeat can also be measured, and the change in that heartbeat can be measured, but the fear cannot be measured. Many psychologists held experiments based on observable behavior. The notable psychologists of these schools were Skinner, Pavlov, Tolman, Hull, J.B. Watson, etc. So, the behaviorism or the behavior of an individual may thus be supposed to be controlled by environmental forces and not by hereditary endowments or innate differences. The doctrine of behaviorism, propounded by Watson and his disciples, thus give a new era in the field of psychology by making it something materialistic, mechanistic, deterministic, and objective. According to the behaviorist school, psychology is a purely experimental branch of natural science. The objective is which to be elaborate, control, and predict behavior. So, behaviorism can be used to control and predict a behavior, but it is purely an experimental branch. The name behaviorism came from the work of psychologist John B. Watson in the early 20th century. He rejected the method introspection or self inspection, which is used by the structuralist and functionalist school, as a method of studying behavior and declared that only observable behavior are worthy of serious study. Watson didn't believe in introspection or self inspection. He also believed that psychology is science, just like physics, chemistry, biology, and as a science, it should be based on concepts and can be observed and objectively and reliably observed. Behaviorism also refers to a set of different theories concerning the developmental process that attributes the control of developmental outcomes more to environmental factors than to biological ones. The link between today's and behavioral theorists and the behaviorists of the early 20th century are stronger than similar links found in other theoretical perspectives. Some basic assumptions are common to all behavioral views or developments, and they are: development is a function of learning. Only because of learning, development is happening. Development is a result of different types of learning. Individual differences in development reflect differences in the histories and past experiences of individual. Each individual is different and their experience is also different. So, according to these difference in experiences, the individual development is also different. The next one is development results from the organization of existing behavior. Next one is biological factors set general limits on the kinds of behaviors that develop, but the environment determines the behavior in which the individual engages. Not the theory, not the biological factors determines the character of an individual, but the environmental factors also determines the character of an individual. And the next one is the development of the individual is not directly related to biological determined stages. Okay, and some of the important tenets of the behaviorist schools or behaviorism is: psychology is a science of stimulus and response. As such, it is concerned with the study of receptors, that is, sense organs, and effectors, muscles, and nerves. So, according to this behavioral school of psychology, psychology is science of stimulus and response. A stimulus is given and an appropriate response to that stimulus is given, and the connection between these two gives rise to development. The next one is the chief task of psychology is to study the overt or observable behavior that can be measured scientifically. Okay, the chief task is to measure this observable behavior, not the consciousness of the individual. Next one is behavior is merely the response to some environmental stimulus. It is guided by sense and it can be explained in terms of the association between stimulus and response. How much the association between the stimulus and response is, the behavior can be developed or can be changed according to that association. Environmental forces are more important in determining the behavior and shaping the personality of an individual. And the next one is all behavior is learned in the process of interaction with environment. So these are some of the basic tenets of behaviorism. So behaviorism in total says that behavior of an individual can be studied or predicted by observing the observable behavior of that individual, and it's a science of stimulus and response. Now we are going to deal with some of the theories of learning. These theories of learning are very important in studying the behaviorism, but I am not going to deal in detail because we will study it later. I am going to give an outline about the theories of learning. The first theory of learning is trial and error theory of learning by E.L. Thorndike. The famous psychologist E.L. Thorndike, who is also known as the founder of modern educational psychology, was the initiator of this trial and error theory. This theory is based on his experiments on different animals like chickens, cats, and rat. So you can see a box here. This is called as puzzle box of E.L. Thorndike. So in one of his experiments, he put a hungry cat in a puzzle box. There was only one door which could be opened by correctly manipulating a latch. A fish was placed outside the box. The smell of the fish acted as a strong motive for the hungry cat to come out of the box. The situation is described by Thorndike himself as: it tried to squeeze through every opening, it claws and bites the bars or wires, it thrusts its paws through any opening and claws at everything it reaches. In this way, it made a number of random movements, and one of its random movements, the latch was manipulated accidentally. The cat came out and got its reward. In subsequent trials, such incorrect responses were gradually reduced and cat took less time on each succeeding trial. So, based upon these experiments, he summarized that learning involves trial and error or selection and connection. We'll made lot of trial and error methods and we'll try to learn something. The second one is learning is the result of the formation of connections. We'll find the connection between the stimulus and the responses. Third one is learning is incremental, not insightful. The fourth one is learning is direct, not mediated by ideas. Based on the experiments, he also sums up that the following stages are there in the process of learning. The learning happens in a different stages and he give almost 7 stages and they are the first one is drive. We'll deal with the experiment. So in this present experiment it was hunger and was intensified by the sight of the food. The second one is goal. The goal is to get the food by getting out of the box. Third one is block. The cat was confined in the box with a closed door. That closed door and the box was the block. Fourth one is random movements. The cat persistently tried to come out the box without knowing how. He doesn't know how to come. He made a random of movements. The fifth one is chance success. As a result of this striving and random movements, by chance he succeeded in opening the door. And the sixth one is selection. The cat recognized the correct way to manipulate the latch and he selected the proper movement. The seventh one is fixation. At last, the cat learned the proper way to open the door by eliminating all the incorrect responses. Like this, he said that the learning takes place in every individual by these 7 steps. Now, the another theory of learning is behavioral theory is theory of classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. So he comes to the study by while studying the functioning of the digestive system, he encountered an unforeseen problem. The dogs in his experiment salivated not only upon actually eating food but also when they saw the food. He also noticed that they began to salivate when they noticed the man who usually brought it or even hearing his footsteps. So Pavlov began to study this phenomena which is called as conditioning. In his experiment, Pavlov kept a hungry dog for a few days and then tied him to the experimental table which was fitted with a certain mechanically controlled devices. This is the figure. Arrangements was made to give food to the dog through an automatic mechanism. He also arranged for a bell to ring every time food was presented to the dog. When the food was put before the dog and the bell was rung, there was automatic secretion of saliva from the mouth of the dog. The activity of presenting the food accompanied with the ringing of the bell was repeated several times and the amount of saliva secreted was measured. After long trials, the dog was given no food, the bell was rung. Surprisingly, he found out that even in the absence of food, that is the natural stimulus, right? The ringing of the bell ringing is an artificial stimulus, caused the dog to secrete the saliva, that is a natural response. So, this is the picture of that experimental setup. The dog is getting conditioned with the noise of this bell and it began to salivate without having food itself. So this theory of conditioning as advocated by Pavlov thus considers learning as a habit formation and is based on the principle of association and situation. The perfect association occurs between the types of stimuli presented together. As a result, after some time, the natural stimulus can be substituted or replaced by an artificial stimulus, and this artificial stimulus is able to evoke the natural responses. This theory is called as theory of classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Another theory is theory of conditioning by John Watson. He is known as the father of behaviorism. He also supported the Pavlov's ideas on conditioned responses. Through his experiments also, Watson tried to demonstrate the role of conditioning in producing as well as eliminating emotional responses such as fear. For his experiment, Watson took an 11-month-old child named Albert as his subject. The baby was given a rabbit to play with. The baby liked it very much and was pleased to touch it with its fur. He carefully observed the pleasant response of the baby. After some time, in the course of the experiment, as soon as the baby touches the rabbit, a loud noise was produced to frighten the baby. The loud noise was repeated every time he tried to touch the rabbit, and this gave rise to a fear response. After some time, the baby began to fear the rabbit even when there is no sound of loud noise. When it touches the rabbit, he began to fear. In this way, the baby learned to fear the rabbit through conditioning. He conditioned the baby to be in fear with the rabbit. This is the the picture of the little Albert experiment. From these experiments, he concluded that all type of learning can be explained in terms of the process of conditioning. In this kind of learning, association plays a major role since the individual responds to an artificial stimulus because he associates it with the natural stimulus. Another one is called as operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner. This theory of operant conditioning was formulated by B.F. Skinner in 1930s. This theory is called as operant conditioning because it based on some certain operations or actions which is an organism to carry out. In this theory, Skinner made a distinction between a respondent behavior and an operant behavior. For these experiments, Skinner devised a special apparatus called Skinner box. The Skinner box may contain a rat, a lever, and a device for delivering a pellet of food. Every time the rat presses the lever, it gets a pellet of food. Gradually, the rat learns to press the lever when it needs food, and the response by lever pressing is strengthened because it being food. In this theory, Skinner makes a distinction between respondent behavior and operant behavior. According to him, there are two types of response: elicited responses and emitted responses. Responses elicited by specific stimuli are called respondents. It is made up of scientific stimulus. Responses which need not be correlated with any non-stimulus but are emitted by the organism are called operant. Operant conditioning is the process whereby an operant behavior is made more frequent by reinforcement. The theory of reinforcement and punishment is introduced by B.F. Skinner, which is very important in the field of education, saying that reinforcement should be given to the children, and this reinforcement will lead them to study well. This reinforcement and punishment, the punishment should be ejected, but the punishment should be ejected, for that purpose negative reinforcement should be given. That is the theory of B.F. Skinner operant conditioning. The next one is reinforcement theory by Clark L. Hull. The drive detection theory of learning postulated by Clark L. Hull is connectionist theory, which holds that learning is nothing but stimulus response association. He also said that learning is a stimulus response association. According to Hull, the tendency to make a particular response to a given stimulus, that is SER, is the result of habit formed through reinforced practices, that is SHR, strength of the drive D, intensity of the stimulus V, and incentive motivation K, and it is mathematically stated that SER is equal to SHR into D into V into K. If anyone had a value of 0 for this reaction, we can say that the learned response will not be occurred. These all are the theories related to behaviorism, and these all theories give a connection between these three words: stimulus, response, and reinforcement. The stimulus produced by the instructor is responded by the learner, and the learner is given with a reinforcement which leads to change their behavior or learn them better. That is called as behaviorism. So some of the merits of behaviorism and its contribution to education are: the behaviorism is based on objective behavior, objective observation of the behavior and the events. Behaviorism helps in replacing introspective measures with the scientific and objective measures. The second one is behaviorism, while giving second place to hereditary characters, highlighted the role of environment in shaping and modifying the behavior of children. So, the behavior of the children can be modified by giving them good opportunities to deal with the good environment. The third one is the approach to dealing with abnormal and mentally sick person as well as delinquent, maladjusted, backward and problem children was also drastically changed on account of the experimental findings of the behaviorist. So this gives a new era in the field of education. The fourth one is, since behaviorist does not believe in entities like mind and mind-body problems, the Mendel approach to human behavior were altogether discarded. Subjects like sensation, emotion, perception were adopted from psychology, and new concepts like stimulus, response, habits, learning, and conditioning were introduced. Next one is behaviorism helped in extending the scope of educational psychology to include the study of animals as a way to learn more about human nature. So study of animal can also contribute to the learning of human nature. This is by behaviorism. Next one is behaviorism advocated the use of reinforcement and rewards in place of punishment and unpleasant experiences. So it helps in developing the child more. The seventh one is behaviorism highlighted the role of motivation and definition of the aims and purpose in learning and shaping of behavior. And the eighth one is behaviorism give rise to new ideas in the field of education like programmed learning, individualized self-instructional program, computer-assisted instruction, etc. So behaviorism in education and teaching strategies. Now the behaviorism is considered not as a schools of psychology but an approach to education. So it can be also thought as a form of classroom management. Behaviorists believe that if teachers provide positive reinforcement or rewards, whenever students perform a desired behavior, they will learn to perform the behavior on their own. The behaviorism focuses on the idea that all behavior are learned through interaction with the environment. So, the learning theory states that behavior are learned from the environment and says that innate or inherent factors have a very little influence on behavior. Another common example of behaviorism in the education system is positive reinforcement. For example, when a student get a treat, if he get 100% in spelling test, in future students will work hard to get more rewards. Okay. In classroom, the behavioral theory, learning theory is key in understanding how to motivate and help students, and this motivation helps the students in a very effective manner. Teachers use behaviorism to show students how they should react and respond to certain stimuli. Students are passive participants in behavioral learning. Teachers are giving them the information as an element of stimulus response. Teachers use behaviorism to show students how they should react and respond to certain stimuli. A repetition and positive reinforcement go in hand with the behavioral learning theory. Motivation plays an important role in the behavioral learning. Positive and negative reinforcement can be motivators for the students. For example, if a student who receives praise for good test scores is much more likely to learn the answers effectively because to get a more better score. The student who receives no praise is experiencing a negative reinforcement and he'll try to learn more to get a praise in next text. So the behaviorism as an educational approach is very important since it is considering the observable behavior of the individual and the conditioning is applied. So it's a good approach in the field of education. Some of the behaviorist teaching strategies are: the first one is drills. Teachers may practice skills using drill patterns to help students see the repetition and reinforcement that behavioral learning theory uses. The next one is question and answer. The question is given as the stimulus and the answer is taken as the response. Gradually, we can make the students gradually getting harder with the questions to help students and their learning can be motivated. The third one is guided practice. Teachers can directly involve in helping students go through problems to give them the reinforcement and behavior demonstration you want them to follow. The next one is regular review. It's more important in behavioral theory. Going back over materials and giving positive reinforcement will help the students to learn better. The next one is positive reinforcement. The main uh, important thing and the behaviorism is the positive reinforcement. While getting a positive reinforcement, student will get intrinsically motivated. This reinforcement can be in the form of verbal reinforcement or and praises, rewards, etc. But there are some limitations to behaviorism, and they are the first one is they behavior the human behavior is so complex. So this cannot be studied by breaking down into simple stimulus response reactions. So behaviorism believes in simple stimulus response reaction, but the human nature is so complex. Next one is behaviorism focuses its attention totally on observable behavior and neglect the consciousness of the mind. The next one is behaviorism attached all importance to the environment in shaping human behavior and neglected the role of heredity. We can say that the heredity and environment are playing equal roles. So the behaviorism rejected the role of heredity. These three are the some of the limitations of behaviorism. So the behaviorism is very important in nowadays because we can shape the nature of the students. We can shape the learning style of the students by conditioning them. But there are some limitations also. Um, but behaviorism plays an important role in the field of education.